My next guest will prove once again that some of the finest hard rock and metal over the course of the last several decades has come from Western Massachusetts. He is Mike Mushok of Stained, and it's good to see you, man. How are you?
Good, Lou. How are you?
Pretty good. I always tend to do a little bit of histrionics with you and the Kill Switch guys and others. How did that end up such a great place to be from with so many bands?
I don't know. I mean, maybe the fact that I don't know. I feel that, a lot of times there's nothing else really to do, I guess. So just sat in my room and played guitar all along, you know what I mean?
We were bored. We started bands.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Well, this is the first Stained record that we're going to get, I think, in 12 years. I began to despair over several of those years that we would, perhaps never hear from the band as a whole again. Why did this turn out to be the time?
We've talked about it and it just seemed right. I mean, Aaron has been doing his country career for a while now. And, we got back together in, 2019 and, we're able to do some shows, which was great. And then we had a whole 2020 plan, but as with a lot of people, that kind of, went away. And, in the meantime, we did that tour with Korn in 2021. And that's where a lot of the stuff for this record kind of came up. I was, kind of writing every day on that and was actually able to get together with Aaron and play him some ideas. And I mean, that's kind of where, this all started really for this record. Kind of got some direction of what he wanted, what he liked. And, that's how we were able to move forward with it.
If you would be so kind, put me and anybody watching or listening in the room with you guys. Where physically are you? What's the room like? Are you playing stuff live? Are you playing demo record? Like walk me through one of these sessions.
Yeah, I had a lot of songs and they're all demoed. So it was basically just, instrumentals songs. And I would take something that I liked and I would just, play it for him. Aaron would listen and, like, oh, I like that verse. Maybe we could try this, maybe change the chorus a little. So it was just really kind of getting ideas of, where he was at, what music that I had that he was, wanted to sing over, and really kind of taking those notes, going back, reconstructing the songs if need be, changing parts, rewriting stuff. And finally when we decided we were going to do it, and I kind of had a pretty good group of what I thought would be, would make up the record. And Eric ended up being the producer. Eric and I kind of went back and did the same process through the music. Kind of refining the songs, demoing them, and then he'd take it to Aaron and they would work on the melody and the lyrics.
At that initial session, are you, you're playing the demos, or are you like scratching notes down on a notepad? Like,
I
hey,
am, yeah, frantically.
because
Yeah.
that sounds like it could be a hell of a thing to go through after you've written all the notes, like trying to understand your own handwriting and stuff,
Sometimes you don't really, yeah, exactly, yeah, for sure. And I don't have the best penmanship, so yeah, that is exactly what it is. I'd kind of write down what the working title was, and then whatever notes there were, just so, because as you go through your 6-8 songs and you don't remember what, what I mean, it kind of all starts to blend. So it really is about getting those notes down and kind of getting some direction.
So when it comes time to actually lay these songs down, how do you assemble everybody? Where did you go? What were the sessions like? Talk me through all that.
Sure. Well, this was a lot different for us on this record just because, Aaron is always out playing. He always is working, so we kind of ended up, tracking these off of the demo, and Eric was kind of flying around. We have a studio at our rehearsal spot in Western Mass, and I did my guitars there. In fact, funny, I mean, Eric and I were supposed to get together and go through these songs together, and he got COVID the day he was supposed to fly. So he ended up not coming, and we ended up doing everything through Zoom, putting the songs like that. And then he would go to Nashville and work with Aaron on them. And when it came time to do it, we just worked off of the demos and put everything together that way. So I did all my guitars in Western Mass. Aaron did his vocals in Nashville. Johnny did his bass in Western Mass, and the drums were done at Eric's studio in Los Angeles.
How did it feel to do it remotely like that? Now, certainly groups going back to at least Pink Floyd and The Wall, where they were mailing master tapes so everybody could lay things down. Certainly the COVID era bumped up that style of recording even more. But how did it feel to you to do it that way?
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, one thing I'll say about it is that we knew pretty much what the songs were going to be, so that was different. A lot of times we'll get together, we'll write the music, we'll track it, and then the last thing is Aaron will work on the lyrics. I mean, this we made sure that the lyrics and the melodies were pretty much solidified before we kind of move forward. So we had it. And again, as you go, I mean, things change, things come up, and that's kind of why we did it the way we did. We did the drums were the last things recorded.
See, that's kind of weird too. And were the drums done at that studio in LA? Because at times drums can probably be the hardest thing to get perfect.
Well, yeah, and he has a drum kit set up, Mike, that doesn't move, doesn't change. So if you do have to go back and change something, or we could do it in bunches. I think we did like 8 and then maybe like 4 more afterwards. So you kind of have a consistent sound if you're using the same kit that's mic'd up the same without having to go back in, reset up, get sounds again. So it's just really to kind of keep the drum sound a little bit more consistent for the record.
What kind of gear were you using on this? Certainly you have, and I've seen many of them up close. You have some pretty amazing guitars, and I know you have quite a bit of other vintage gear. Tell me about the kind of stuff you were using on this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm kind of one that doesn't stray too far from what I've always done. I mean, I have the same, half dozen amp heads that I kind of always bring, with a diesel VH4 being, probably the main head. I have a couple Bogner heads and some old Marshalls. I have a 5150 head, which is, a great sounding amp. And we had, different cabinets. I had, Marshall cabinets, Bogner. So for myself, that was really kind of what we went through, went through the songs and figured out, what made sense. Actually, it was funny. We were there, and Aaron has some of his gear there, and I remember we were trying to get a clean sound, and there was just this kind of pile of furniture and all this other stuff there, and I see this amp covered. I lifted it, and it was an old Vox AC30. I said, let's try this. And it was literally one of those things where we plugged it in, and I plugged into it. We didn't touch anything. And I ended up going back and like redoing like all my clean parts with that amp because it just sounded so good. I remember texting him going, "Oh my God, this amp's amazing." And it was just kind of sitting there. We weren't even really thinking of it. And yeah, it was a good find though.
I want to come back and talk specifics about the single Lowest in Me, but in general, because this tune, it has a classic Stained sound. Without getting too deep in the technical weeds, how do you make a Stained song sound like a Stained song? What is the recipe for the sort of classic sound of the band?
Sure. I don't know. I mean, listen, I think, low tune baritone guitars, the fact that writing the riffs, it's probably, somewhat familiar because, that's written a lot of them, so I would say all those things. And obviously, I mean, Aaron's voice is probably the most recognizable, piece of the puzzle. His voice is, one of my favorites, that's for sure. So, and he always does such a great job, I think, with the lyrics.
And if we can talk more specifics about Aaron's voice, because I don't know that he quite gets the credit he should as a very distinctive sounding vocalist. Is that something that generally a person is born with?
Yeah, I think, it has to be, right? I mean, ever since I remember the first time I ever heard him sing and just being like, I remember where I was. I remember what he sang, and just being like, "Where have you been?" Do you know what I mean? Because I'd always been looking for a singer to work with, and yeah, I was blown away literally the first time I heard him sing.
Well, you got to talk the circumstances then. When, where, everything. What did he sing? What were the tunes?
Sure, it was probably fall of 1994. I was in college at the time, living in my parents' basement, of course, the typical, and I remember he came over and he had a song called Black Rain that he had written, and that's what he sang. And yeah, I was just blown away. We're calling my girlfriend, who's actually now my wife at the time, just like, oh my God, this kid's, you know, so good. And that's when we started. He knew a bass player, and I was talking to, our old drummer, John, and we just started writing songs.
What college were you going to? What were you studying at this point?
uh, it was called Western New England College, which is now Western New England University in Springfield, Mass, and electrical engineering.
Electrical engineer. Well, that certainly makes sense because not just because you're a guitar player. I mean, you and I have had so many talks about forward thinking technologies that you've been involved in.
Sure.
I guess that's why you understand that stuff. And I stare at you like a dumbass when
Listen, you're giving me way more credit than I deserve. But thank you. I'll take it.
Well, let's talk about Lowest in Me. An obvious question would be, why is that the tune that stood out to everybody from the pack to lead with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the conversations happen and everybody kind of gravitated towards that song as being the first single. Maybe like you said, maybe it's, kind of familiar for us, because there is an electronic element on this record that we haven't, done. That was something, Aaron had taken some of the songs and worked with a programmer very early on and kind of added some of these different flavors, like you drop out like a guitar part and play it on a keyboard or something, you know what I mean? So there are some songs that are, more heavily influenced by that on the record. But yet I still feel like it's Stained. I think it's just kind of more of a, a modern version. I think Eric really helped bring that element to life as well. But Lois and Me doesn't have a lot of that in it. It's kind of, more typical of what the band is.
Where was that tune on the totem during the recording of the record? Because so often I talk to somebody about creating an album and the big hit single is actually, we worked on the album for 2 years and then we busted out this song in the last 15 minutes.
It's so funny you say that. Well, I mean, I had written that song. I remember writing it on the Korn tour. The tempo was a little bit slower, but it was literally, we needed a couple of more, and the music was there, and we just never, Eric and I really had never just kind of gone through and, had him kind of put his, twist or direction on where it was going. So he sped up the tempo on it, and we might have changed keys. I don't remember. But it was literally the last writing session. I went down to Nashville. He was doing vocals, and Aaron was on the road, and we spent 2 days and we put together that and a song called Here and Now. So those two songs were actually the last two musically to come together. And we did those in Nashville.
Let's talk about Nashville a little bit. I know you've been going there for many years, and certainly the physical look of the city has changed dramatically in that time. It's almost unrecognizable. Tell me about working in Nashville. Tell me about hanging out there. It's a very interesting place, but again, it's gone crazy the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, and I feel like every time I see an old friend, they say they're moving to Nashville. I mean, like everybody I know is, moving to Nashville. I'm not, I will say, but listen, when I go there, it's really for one thing. I was there for 2 days. I went in, we sat in the studio both days all day, and I went to my hotel room, and that was about it for me. So yeah, it was really just about going there and working, like you said, which I've done before, but that's where everybody is now. I mean, it feels like, everything's kind of moved from LA to Nashville.
Why do you suppose that is?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, listen, it was always what, the music capital, they said, right? So, and I feel like a lot of the writers are there. So I feel like, a lot of people that want to collaborate, a lot of that's getting done there. Studios everywhere, but I'm not really sure. But I mean, listen, and it's just, it is a nice place though. I mean, it's a lot different than LA. That's for sure.
Are there any lessons to be learned from the country folks out of Nashville, over in the rock world? Because in country, also in pop and in hip hop, if somebody blows up, suddenly everybody else is wanting to do duets with them and write together, and there's a lot of cross-pollination. Whereas in the rock world, at least it seems to me, somebody starts to get really popular, and instead of helping to build them up to sort of raise all boats in the genre, people immediately turn on them. Oh, they suck now. And I'm like, oh man. And you guys wonder why we can't get a Super Bowl halftime show or get on the fucking Grammy Awards. Is there a lesson to be learned here?
Sure, maybe. I mean, yeah, I never really thought of it that way. I mean, the one thing that I know, like as far as touring wise, is that those guys only, go out and do like, a Thursday through Sunday, and they come, which I mean, I think that's, and we had done one tour like that because Aaron was used to it. It's hard to tour like that too. But I mean, it is kind of nice because it does give you that, breaks things up a little bit, and you can, be home a little bit more. But yeah, the collaboration thing, listen, I feel like there's, I mean, there's definitely collaborations going on, it's just, yeah, you are right though. It seems like there are way less of them.
Now tell me about touring with Godsmack, because I know you guys have all known each other for a bazillion years.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I, love playing with those guys. And yeah, I was thinking, I think the first time we played with them was the local stage on the Warp Tour in 1998 in Northampton, Mass. And I remember we had a gig that night, and they came and played with us at a club we used to always play in Springfield. It hasn't been there for years. And that was kind of how, it started. And I remember right before Break the Cycle came out, we toured with them, and we did, a tour, I think on our last record with them too. So, I love those guys, it'll be a lot of fun. That's for sure.
If you would, and I normally don't ask musicians specifically about other musicians, but Shannon Larkin, who drums for them, is a super nice guy. But what amazes me about Shannon is, and I'm not being negative, his arms are about this thin. They're not much more thick than a drumstick, and yet right. He hits the drums like a pile driver. How is that physically possible that he can hit that way?
He is a monster, that is for sure. I mean, yeah, he gets behind that kit, and it's yeah, he's an amazing drummer. Yeah.
And what is it about the chemistry, of a band, and it could be Stained, it could be Godsmack. What is it about players that make them play well together?
I don't know. Sometimes it just clicks. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, I definitely feel we have that. When I watch Godsmack, I definitely see that as well, and maybe part of that comes from years of playing together too, but I feel like even early on, I felt when we were playing that I felt that connection that, of what we were doing, that it got me excited, and that was really always kind of the goal is, even in writing a record, is coming up with stuff that you get excited about, and in this record that we just did, you have to listen to it over and over and over. You get new mixes, you get, new versions of songs, and things are changing. And it was funny. I had to go to Florida last week for a few days, and I was on the plane, and I just wanted to listen to it. I just, you know what I mean? Because I'm real proud of it. I'm real happy with the way that it, came out. And I think that that's part of that chemistry of us, when we get together to put something together, it gets me excited. And we've been fortunate that has translated for us, that other people have liked it as well.
And when an album is done and you are confident that it's done and it's sequenced and it's mixed and it's mastered, when you get that first overall listen, what is your preference in how to listen to it? Do you put buds on, headphones? Is there a special room in the house you lay on the floor?
Well, that's changed over the years. You know what I mean? So there's been, yeah, I used to listen in my office, and then it was, you know, in our great room, and the car is always a really good place. You know, I feel like, and yeah, and this record, that a lot of it, I was away, so I didn't really have, but you know, AirPods was really the. And I even said to him, I go, I have my car and I have AirPods to listen to mixes. And he's like, oh, he goes, I always use that for a reference. You know, I said, okay, I've never used them as a reference before. Because again, it's been, you know, with Saint Sonia, a lot of times it's home headphones, you know, I'll use, you know, that I always record with. So yeah, try to listen to it in a few different places. You hear different things in different places.
Well, I'm very excited for all of that, Mike, and it's always great to catch up with you. I hope everybody on your end, the fam and everybody are well.
Yeah, everybody's great. Same to you. I mean, yeah, I always appreciate, you know, I mean, you guys, I remember since the very beginning. So thank you very much for, you know, all your support over the years.